Let me know. if you-
Nobody
Yeah,
outside cares
I
about
got it in the chat, so
Okay.
just wait.
If you could, that'd be
It's quite powerful of me, really.
like a lot of fun.
Just waiting to make sure.
Write the date down.
I never know what the
Right,
right protocol is to start.
I know. Well, it's July 11th.
That's right.
Here we are.
Yeah.
Well, we have some documentation y'all can review if you
Cool.
like. If you don't have anything for us, we'll go ahead and open that way then. Should need to get it on your way in. Show you everything. On the front side, you'll see some just big pictures, some reminders of where our focal points are and what our notice items were, and then the details of our offer or smell down on the other side. So we'll just give you a few minutes to take a look. Be ready whenever you have questions.
Do you want to just walk through it? Or- I don't know if you have any commentary with it.
I think it's kind of all there. If you have questions, we would love to answer those or talk through any particular points that stick out for you.
We just want to go. You have any questions?
So the additional step, 1C, would be adding an additional step to each column. Right now, at Credit One, we currently offer 250 once you've topped out each, just a 250. Okay?
And masters, it goes to 350.
So the only thing I would ask is that we have some time to calculate the cost of that, just to see what that would do currently with our current staff, and then what would be the cost value of adding that extra step to each column.
Yeah, to be extra clear, we're not wanting to replace what currently exists in the negotiated agreement. We just want to add another step to the salary scale.
So it'd be essentially be an increase of, I want to say, about $500 instead of 250 if you go for a step down. So you'd add another column at the end of each one, correct?
Correct.
Well, I know I shared with the group the supplemental salary schedule and the added cost of that at our current rate. And so looking at that, This is with what we currently pay at our current rate to adopt the supplementary schedule that you presented as a team would cost $73,437 currently.
Does that include driver's ed?
They just took everything that you had here and then so they said, okay, this is what it's gonna look like. That would be the current cost. So they took the percentages that you assigned this way. I believe they did it on this spreadsheet. Here's you to see, but the addition of that alone would be $73,000. It has to obviously come from somewhere. And so that was a piece. I know also attached, there were a couple questions, some people that were, Amy wrote at the bottom that were left off. So just some guidance on that.
Yeah, we had forgotten a couple, and so we went back in to our document to fix those.
Yes, we did. This one, yeah. We did, and we, without driver's ed, came up almost did that. So you sent out before they added in driver's ed.
I think if you look at the bottom.
No, I'm saying before you guys added, you had 68.5.
Yeah.
Something.
Yeah, 68.5 with the addition of drivers
We added in the missing ones as well and fixed them on another spreadsheet and came up with pretty much the same. We just didn't add in driver's ed. We didn't know how we were gonna deal with.
And I just think she took what we left on here with that, and that's how we came up with that. So.
And now I was waiting for driver's ed to actually get back because they have actual hours.
Sure.
Take doesn't.
Sure.
I'm pretty sure they don't change summer to summer.
Yeah, I
That's
think,
actually a cost that we can have, actually.
but to adopt this supplemental proposal would be an extra $73,000. So that was one of, just something that we discussed as a team. And then my question is, I know, Jack, you've been working on this because I know we met in the fall to talk about this. How many of your other members, have they had a chance to look over this? Were they able to share any thoughts with you?
The thoughts that we have are what we took into creating it.
There's a lot of talking to people and they're pretty much saying we need to change it. I mean, for me, it's still the biggest headache of it all is no one knows how it's calculated.
I assume
It's
it's
just-
kind of like you guys
so
were
it's
able to,
like-
they just assigned a percentage to that. And I don't know, you know.
The only thing different we did is we kept kind of everything equal when it comes to like head coaches, head activity groups, head whatever. Instead of all the different, how they're just different percentages, we definitely got rid of half percentages, so we don't really understand that part. But yeah, we talked to everybody that we could about this, so that was taken into consideration when we made this to begin with.
So I think you're asking, does this proposal have a support in the bargaining unit? Is that the question?
Actually, the only thought I have is, this is the first year we've talked about this now, as far as an actual.
At the table,
proposal.
sure,
Yes,
yeah.
at the proposal. It's the first time the board is seeing it at the proposal table. My question would be, and this is something for your consideration, would this be something that would be a good thing for a committee where the board would assign a representative and then to work with NEA and then have open meetings where teachers could come and coaches could come and share that input and craft something that way? Would that be an acceptable, to spend a year? maybe
We have
putting
done that
forward?
work on our end.
Yeah,
with
I
the bargaining
think we've
unit,
already
so.
talked to all the people that we would be creating a committee with to kind of get that direction. I talked with Kara Kimberlin the other day, and the only question she had was the 7th through 8th head activities director. That used to be a split position. at the middle school because that director then was teaching halftime and doing that. So do we need that position at all? At that first 15%, like some of, that would be the only conflict from any of the discussions that we've had.
And I know talking to Ty and Jeremy, what they currently do with that position is they'll assign 2 or 3 people to that role to cover games. And so they'll end up splitting that position.
What was that position previously at?
It's like right here. Where is it on?
There it is.
There it is. Who was it? 12 and
There it is, 12.5.
season.
So you've spoken with Ty and Jeremy and
I,
Kara and all the coaches and
we spoke, I haven't spoken with Ty because we were just trying to keep them as close as we could to what was there. Originally,
I just wonder.
as far as getting rid of all of the half percentages and things like that.
I just
so-
wonder if there is even relevant or at this point, it just does need a bunch of eyes on it again to say, well, what we were doing before, maybe we have half the program we used to in this or double the program. I just wonder if we had several voices or several opportunities for input from folks, if we could, is 9 through 12 scholars goal at 12%, is that, we might have been taking that number from other folks' schedule, or maybe that's within 1% or 2 of what it was, but is that appropriate compared to debate or to forensics or parallel to stage or some of these others, is someone's feelings are gonna get hurt unless we have some buy-in from some folks.
I think we're comfortable with the buy-in of the folks that we represent.
Yeah.
That's where we're coming from.
We set
We
out.
have been doing this, like I said, since the fall, so we have been talking to as many people as we can, as much as we can about it, and no one, I don't think anyone lost is gonna lose anything or go down.
And when you say you've been doing since the fall, just having conversations, you mean? Gotcha.
Doing conversations and getting comparative information from other districts, comparing their supplemental schedules to ours, all that information, all that work, we've been doing that since the fall.
My only thought would be is we talk about people looking back and going, how are these percentages assigned?
But that's the status quo, right? That's right now.
Right, that's what I'm saying, and so trying to think of maybe there's a better way, because 2 years from now, this whole room may look different with the 6 of us, and so to be able to say, well, what the district and NEA did is put together a committee to study this, here's what they came up with.
Well, that's why originally we had them in on levels.
And I'm just trying to think,
To help explain the different levels of
Well, I feel like we approached several people with the idea of creating a committee, even from the beginning, to
And
say,
no
let's
one-
sit down and look at this and work together before we got to this point. And the committee idea wasn't, it was like, you guys we did the research. And we talked to people within the, that are on the supplemental scale. Talk to as many people as we can, including yourself, and again, do we really need another committee to do what we've been asked to do?
So
And we felt like this is what we were asked to do when we approached about, hey, let's take a look at this supplemental.
I appreciate that. I just feel like I'm not talking with an athletic director at a school, and maybe just of late, maybe just recently, but not including.
Well, we've been
departments.
talking to
I definitely
care
talked
of
to Tara
her
about this, and
from the beginning too.
so she has been able to put in input on some of this stuff, on a lot of stuff. So again, that's where that frustration of how did this get to where it is, and everyone's saying, it's just how it's always been.
I don't think there's ever gonna be a right formula. Other than comparing what you're doing so that you're competitive, and can attract your sponsors for these extra supplementals or coaches, in comparison to Wellsville, or, I mean, we're looking at hiring an ag teacher, right? We want to be competitive. When you get one teacher to offer this job to, how are we going to compete with Tonganoxie, who has 2 ag openings, Wellsville, who has an ag opening? And that's all we could, this is where the best solution that we have is to stay competitive with the districts around us, with teachers that are applying for the same jobs. Do we want to continue hiring Rule 10 coaches? Or do we want to hire teachers and coaches within our district that have the ability to do these supplementals if we're not going to be competitive with other districts around us that are within 6 to 10, 15 miles apart either direction?
So would
And
you,
so
would you
we are
say-
comfortable with what's here, unless you specifically see something that you think is astronomical or absurd. Like, we've compared it with Tongi, Wellsville, Baldwin, DeSoto. We've talked to as many people as we possibly can about where they fall on the supplemental, how they fell on the supplemental when it was added. We've done all of that talking already.
And that, I appreciate the work of your group. My question would be, let's just say, okay, boom, this is stamped, we go through there. There's gonna be people that question why, perfect example, why is production high school yearbook at 10% and band is at 12%? To me, I would think that collaborative working group, that committee would be able to define some of those things, because these are still.
I think you can define it.
Right.
As in, your answer would be, we took the old schedule and looked at where those percentages were based, and then in comparison with districts, the districts northeast and south of us. And it's still within that competitive range.
So I think our position on the issue is that work has been done on our side. We're comfortable answering the questions when they come because we know that those questions have answers, whereas in the status quo, they don't have answers. So when people from the bargaining unit come to me and say, hey, how come this supplemental is paid this way? I say, I don't actually know. And furthermore, when Jack asked Kara, she did not know, right? So those are not answers I like to give people. I like to give people answers like, hey, this is a research-based conclusion that the team came up with based on all of this work that they did, which you can see and look at, ask questions about at any moment. That's a much better answer to give people than the one we currently can. If we spend a year doing committee work, what that means is we're replicating the work we've already done. But it has already been done on our end. So I think that's where we're at.
And that's perfect. I just thought using your proposal as a rough draft, and then being able to take a year to go back and look at that, where people, because when you ask people, hey, do you want to serve on a committee? What are we doing? Well, we're going to do this. But as soon as people see this,
No, they won't, because I asked all year, people come, help me with this, join us, let's do a commit, let's form a committee and get this going so we can get this figured out. And every one of them said, I don't want to touch it.
We'll trust you.
I trust you, you can do it. And I asked every person that I talked to, that was a teacher or an employee, every one of them were like, nope, I don't want doing that. I want you to fix it for us. So I said the same thing to them. I want someone to help me. And it literally came down to like 3 of us finally were just like, okay, I guess we're doing this on our own.
Yeah.
So let's just use an example. If Chris Dunback comes up and says, hey, I'm only getting 1% 1% for a Cardinal club?
It's a club.
It's club.
It's a club.
It's a club.
All clubs are getting,
So that would be something, who should those things be directed back to?
Well, so this is such a great question because who are they directed to now, right? Whoever you happen to ask, right?
Mhm.
Either you're gonna ask an administrator or you're gonna ask your union representative. And either way, right now, nobody knows the answer. But we would like everyone to know the answer. So I would like it to be true that whomever is asked this question can say, oh, well, if I'm looking at the schedule, it looks like all clubs are paid 1%. And then there's the answer, right? Because I can't really be sure that whomever is being asked knows the answer.
I mean, you've obviously done the work, but do you feel that the levels you put them in, the level one of, I guess what would be called Acacia, what was the breakdown here? The top, those would be athletic in nature, and the bottoms would be academic. Okay. Do you feel like the responsibility, the number of students, maybe the number of parents, the number of hours, the number of months, those all align equally, pretty, as much as you
I
can?
think as of today, with where our district is, yes. What, let's say in the future, we grow to be a 5A school, like, the process is never ending, correct? Like, there's always gonna have to be a revision, but at least it would be, it's more specific, it's a head coach, all right? Where we can revisit one percentage versus like every single head coaching position that exists.
So
This would streamline it a little bit more.
Is the streamlining it based on what that rate of pay or percentage has been in the past? Or is it streamlined based on what those duties are as they exist today? Like a head golf coach versus maybe a head football coach, where football might be year-round, golf maybe 8 weeks or 12 weeks, you know, is it looking at that in any way?
I think everybody is putting in the time for what they're getting paid for currently.
So that's
So
taking into
when we
consideration-
have high expectations
Mhm.
and a compensation that goes along with high expectations, we have to assume that, just like students, that adults are gonna rise to the expectations. And being compensated and doing the work that goes with that job.
Also, that issue exists now, right? With like, you may have somebody who is a head coach of a certain program and they are just a rock star, they're killing the game, working super hard all the time, then they leave and the person you hire to replace them is not that, but they're still getting paid the same, right? Or the opposite happens, like someone's working way, way hard, they're not getting paid the amount of money that they individually might be worth for that work that they're doing. But the fact is that we negotiate supplementals as an entire schedule all at one time in this district. We don't negotiate individual supplementals based on those factors. So this is what we have. And I think that it's the most fair and equitable way to do it based on the work that the team has done. So I do hear and understand your concerns about that. I think those exist now and they'll exist no matter what salary schedule we adopt, really.
So thinking of that future, and then that's a great leeway for my next question. We know that we're going to potentially add more programs. Do you feel like this provides guidance for where the person should fall? Because I think that's one of the other pieces that we talked about of, well, they're 0.5% and that. So you feel like, say, we want to add pickleball team. Do you feel like that would find its, okay, and that's what I think, is that creates a clear guidance of, okay, you're a head coach at a 9th grade level.
We would love that out.
Yeah, I mean, to me, I think that's whatever this is, it leads to the fact that we don't have to revisit and do the work of
Yeah.
this every year.
yes.
So. Yeah. Show the total pot. That'd be perfect. So I think I did this, I think the last couple of years, but these are all very approximated figures. But I did print them off with you just so you can see potential pot of money and then all the things that have to come out of the pot of new money. And I know that you are representing the teachers and the others are a consideration, but as a board, the idea of trying to consider all the people out of that pot of money. So, and I can walk you through this a little bit. Certified salary was $1,500 on the base. That represents about $180,000 new dollars out of that new pot. Classified wages is another 5% at about $120,000. Obviously, an increase in our sped assessment, increase of our property casualty, and then you've got the teacher's certified movement, and it's all approximated at $100,000 there as well. That has to be obviously considered. The other part was the admin and what we call directors, at $70,000 for a total cost of $512. We approximate, you've seen in our general fund dollars, $150,000 this year. So that already exceeds new money offered there. Between the $1,500 plus step movement is pretty much an average of at least $2,000 per teacher. And that's kind of the pot we worked out. And here's our new money. There's not any other hidden pots of dollars here. We know our operating costs are going to go up. Cost of fuel goes up, cost of everything goes up. And so that's kind of what we talked about, looking at new money. And then as you break that down to all the people that have to have a piece of that new money.
Can I ask, can you, when you go back, tell me how many employees are on the certified, how many are on classified,
Sure.
how many are on admin CO, like each, the employee number breakdowns?
Well, I can give you a breakdown, just what, we have about 120 teachers on certified.
Okay,
We have approximately 270 employees total. So I say approximately, that would leave about, I'd say another 140 classified. And then we probably have anywhere from 20 what we would consider to be admin, principals, and directors.
So, yeah, thank you for this breakdown. I know that those numbers are a little bit complicated for you. I think what is unfortunately not complicated is the emergency level teacher shortage that's happening in the US right now, right? It's like over 500,000, I think, at this point. Teachers leaving the profession, and it's not hard to see why, because cost of living continues to increase and the pay that teachers receive is not increasing with it. I think our neighbors have figured this out, because if you look at DeSoto, they've just added 2,500 to their base, which is now 47,000, and Gardner's added 2,400 to their base, which brings them to 45,650. Spring Hill has added 1,000 to their base, which was already quite a bit higher than ours, so they're now at 47,000. Olathe just moved to a new schedule with a base of 46,000. So when you look at the $3,000 increase we're asking you for, which would bring our base salary to 44,500, we're still not competitive enough with other districts necessarily to win in terms of like how do we get and retain like good teachers in our district, right? So I understand that the offer we're bringing to you is a lot. We're asking for a lot for teachers, but we're asking for a lot for teachers because we want to keep good teachers in this district, and our kids deserve that outcome. And we know that teacher turnover costs the district ultimately a lot of money also. So yeah, we understand that there's a hefty price tag associated with increasing salary. We don't ask you to do that from any place of not understanding the gravity of that request.
Yeah, the only thing I would point out is that every district has their own different budgetary pieces. The districts you all labeled, would be considered districts that have a much higher evaluation, much higher student count. They would have a different level of budgeting than we have.
Which is important for us to know on the end of like, how does the sausage get made? But when we're just looking at people who are choosing where they go to work and live and invest their time and livelihood, that part isn't as obvious to them, right? So.
Wellsville's latest board offer though is 3,000 to base, which their base is fairly comparable to ours.
Would that still bring their base up to what we're proposing, which would be 43,000? What would that bring their base up to?
They're within 500 of us. Their
With,
base,
with that offer?
no, their current base is within 500 of us right now. If they bring it up to 3,000, they're gonna be 2,500 at least more. If not, if we went with 1,500, they would still be $1,000 more than us on their base, approximately.
So when you see these figures, these were just initial figures. The question I have is the other several things proposed here, $70,000 out of, when I say we have 5% new funding from the state, that's all essentially minus $36,000 going to staff. And I would feel very comfortable telling our staff all of our new money is going to you minus $36,000. The only way that we're able to meet the other pieces is out of that pool. And so where does, if we do something with supplemental, where does that come out of on this? Does it come out of our classified raises and our certified raises and our admin raises? The other piece I noticed, and I think I did that napkin math last year, by adding $50, I think that was one of the things under insurance benefits, $50 times 120 employees times 12 months ends up costing $72,000. And that's what we have to budget with for the fact that if every employee took that. So
Right.
that again is a very sizable raise as well. So just what I've drawn up here is the teacher's request would be $500,000 with $70,000 in supplemental addition, $72,000 in insurance, as well as $360,000 with $3,000 on the base. So of the new money the district's getting, $450,000, the teachers are requesting $500,000 of that. Would that be accurate?
I think that we're happy to talk about any counteroffer that the board wants to make. Give you time to put together that counteroffer. I think we're fine with that. I think that, those are all numbers you said for sure. Those are certainly all numbers. I think we're asking for what our bargaining unit has asked us to advocate for them. And we're happy to hear kind of your breakdown responses to that if you have a different idea of how those numbers could come together.
Okay, great.
10 minutes. 15.
You know where to find us.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. Yeah, so looking at number 4 under committee compensation and procedure, composition procedures, 4A, like what you added with your wording there, to the idea that the only mandatorily bargainable pieces would be either pay or benefits, correct? That is what you want representation, where it says policy which is mandatorily bargainable. So would you, I know last meeting I shared the document Amy created. Would you just put that there in lieu of that document we talked about last time?
I think our feeling was that this was a more direct way to get to the outcome we're
Right.
looking for, and maybe more comfortable than adding that
Sure.
appendix.
Sure. I think I could speak for the other 2 members that would be perfect to just go ahead and accept that.
Thank you.
I like the changes, and I know you like the changes you added for 3 and the red line. I still have a lot of concerns. If I'm the Meckel family and I come in to meet with Mr. Smith and Mrs. Jones is sitting over there, the first question I have to ask of the family is, why is there a teacher here when I'm here to meet with you as an individual? And whether we got into privacy or not, that's going to make them incredibly uncomfortable. And the idea of trying to form a working relationship, I feel like that's going to be detrimental to that. I think all our teachers know if they feel like they're going to have a conversation with a parent, the first person I would reach out to is my administrator for that support. But I just know when you think of colleague teacher, my first question is going to be, why are they here? Before we've even shared any private information, is why is Ms. Jones here? And how's that going to affect junior when he's in Ms. Jones' class? That would be the only concern I have with that, is just there's a whole other person in that room that in the eyes of that parent may not need to be there.
I think, obviously, we're coming from a perspective of trying to meet multiple needs at the same time, right? But when we look at what research tells us about communication and the way that communication happens, especially in the workplace, we do find that conversation goes better when there are third parties present in the room often. So my hope would be that our employees are not going into meetings consistently feeling like their interests are not already represented, or they're not already in the same corner as their administrator in that meeting. Hopefully that is the status quo that we're looking at, right? However, we do know that a teacher who doesn't feel that anyone is there to help represent their needs or interests is probably not in the best place communicatively or in terms of problem solving. And we want our teachers at their best at every moment. And so this is part of what helps make that happen. I can understand where that would be difficult to explain maybe, but I don't think it's that difficult to explain, to say, for some people, meetings go better when they have a little support or help.
Well, and the only question is, if it's not pertaining to that teacher, that parent may not be as comfortable to share their information. The other question I had is the openness of any meeting with administrators and or others, included but not limited to. That's really open-ended to what's a meeting. If I just stop by in the hall and ask you a question, in thinking big picture, not individual instances, this is a policy that's open to interpretation on either side of that invitation. I feel like now our administrators that would like to have a conversation, now it turns that automatically into a combative, or at least a non-trust potential concern.
I think I can see where you're coming from, except for when I think about the current policy as it's written, which allows for this representation only in the context of a discipline meeting. My understanding of that is that I'm not the one in charge of deciding whether it's a discipline meeting or not, right? the administrator is. So that uncertainty already exists for the employee. And so I think also it kind of comes down to like, do we take one another at our highest ground or not? So my hope would be that administratively, we don't view a person asking for representation in a meeting as an automatically combative action, and could instead be a collaborative action. It's an action toward connection or communication rather than away from. That's how I see it.
So again, I go back to the piece with insurance benefits. Long before I got here, I was board worked with the EMA to establish a very, I would say, equitable, that everybody gets the same $450 towards that. And I like the idea of saying it's going to be 500 instead of, trying to tie that to what's a fluctuating schedule. The only concern I have is those are new dollars. Where do those dollars come out of?
So I actually had a question for you, if this is a good moment.
Sure.
About the document that you gave us.
Sure.
So I noticed that the LOB increase isn't included in this total, and I was wondering why not.
Well, because there are operating costs we're gonna have beyond just new dollars. So our LOB increase, we anticipate to be $150,000. So that would be what we cost for when gas goes up, when we have to repay something, when we have to buy new books, when we have to buy equipment, anything that would be underneath the local option budget. That's what the LOB would be considered for.
So we had, as a board, each year tasked the superintendent with giving us, all right, let's get down to the finest details of what is there, what is our available dollars. And because what I know Mark and I, at least certainly the last 6 or 8 years or more, we always want to be genuine in coming forward with, hey, we're kind of an open book, here's the money. We want to spend every dollar that we can. So put down and find all those dollars that we can. Most years, what it ends up being is kind of whatever that general fund increase is. We're like, all right, let's work with those dollars. Those are the dollars we have to work with. Let's try to fill the ongoing increase in utilities and all the other, expenses and stuff that are there with the LOB. And so when we got down to it this year, we're like, okay, this is the dollars, basically 500,000, maybe upwards of 510 or 12,000 is the dollars that are available. So we didn't really want to come into this process saying, well, we'll give you kind of a low offer, maybe we go back and forth and kind of meet in the middle. We wanted to make sure that we put forward everything that we had up front that we could spend, every dollar that we had. We also wanted to make sure, and we do this each year, ideally, we would like every staff member to benefit to the most that they can. And so would love to do 500 a month on insurance, but we also know that it's a much smaller pool who would benefit from that increase than if we put that extra $50 a month or whatever that amounts to, that increase into just the base to where everybody could benefit. So that's kind of how we approach this and kind of how we put this down each year. So really what we have listed is the dollars that we are authorizing the superintendent to spend this year. The supplemental schedule is kind of what kind of puts another ink in that we like the structure, we like the idea and the plan of let's get this together behind something that we can speak to, point out this is what went into gathering this, but the money for it is a whole nother piece. And while we'd like to address that and we'd like to do that right away, we also know that would have to come out of this that we presented.
So do you have a counter offer for us, like a tool that we can look at? Or, because I'm kind of hearing you say like, yeah, there's a trade-off between these items. I think it would be easier for us if we knew what that trade-off looks like for you. So for instance, if you're saying, hey, on insurance benefits, we're not going to do that, but we'll do the increase to the base that you're asking for. That's a decision we can evaluate,
Yeah,
but
I understand, and I apologize, maybe we kind of went around and getting to this point, but this would be our offer, our counter at this point is what we've listed. If there was any consideration around adding to the insurance, it would mean that we'd have to take that money off of the base that we're offering.
So looking at this, that would be item 1A, the agreement of obviously full step movement. Item 1B would be 1,500 on the base. At this point, I don't think any of the board members feel comfortable until we get exactly what addition of one step, number one, would cost us. Number two, how would that look if I've been topped out, meaning I've been getting $250 a year because I'm on a bachelor's and I exceeded that and I've been in the district 15 years. So when we add that step, does that mean that person just gets an additional $600? Or now we have to catch them up on all the $600 they missed after adding that step? So there's a lot of confusion in what that looks like, because we will have some people that are beyond that. And so getting to a point where we understand exactly what that means and how that works, I don't want to get into a position where, because of a misunderstanding, both groups are at an edge with each other, because when the board hears that, well, that's easy, we just add, a step to each one. But what's that look like for someone who's been topped out for so long? Because that's going to have to be explained to that person why, okay, this year it's just $600. Well, what about all the years I didn't get $600?
right, I mean, if we added a certain amount to the base, I didn't get paid that amount last year, right, or the year before, like, it's pretty common, I think, with salary schedule changes that we don't expect those to be retroactively applied because nobody could afford to make that change ever. So if the option is we retroactively apply every change we make to the salary schedule, or we never change it, then we would never change it, right? We have to do something for our folks who are frozen on the salary schedule, even if that something isn't going to be, you now get $600 per year for the past 15 years. But guess what? The next 15 or whatever, you're going to get that amount of money.
That's
easy for me to explain to people.
And that's a perfect explanation. As long as everybody knew that going in, that would be perfect. And all we would ask,
Like Lawrence did not do that, right? They basically caught everybody up.
well,
They were frozen, so that was.
Yeah. But that understanding of, right, that they had a whole new salary schedule, and the idea of how many times that had to be explained and how many work sessions they had to explain that to their teachers. I just want everybody to understand what that looks like. And we would just ask that we had time to run that. So what is that cost going to be? Because it may be, it may not be $5,000, or it may be, $20,000. And so just going into that, knowing what that looks like. Because if it's just the idea of adding an extra step, I don't think anybody has an argument. It's just a matter of what's it cost, and does everybody understand the non-retroactive piece of that?
And again, it would be dollars that have to fit within this framework here. So, and it could be a situation where maybe it is only, maybe it's $10,000, but it could just be, 25 folks who are benefiting from that instead of 120. So, yes, so Stu, thank you for kind of going through that. That is sort of, I guess, our counter is kind of how he laid that out. That really we have these dollars to work within, and we want to make it happen however we can, but that's our limitations at this point.
Yeah, in terms of the 1,500 on the base, I have pretty substantial concerns about where that puts us in terms of competitiveness with other districts. I guess I would ask that you put some thought into that before the next
We've definitely.
meeting, because I think we did the math. We talked about it earlier in this meeting, but it's not going to get us there. It's not going to, 3,000 will not get us there, but 1,500 will certainly not get us there. So that might be worth revisiting.
Let me put it in this kind of how I think. With a $1,500 raise, what I'll actually be bringing home every month will go to Gambino's one night for fundraiser nights. Half of it to feed even just my family of 3. And the other half of it will go to Barbed Wire to support the other school programs that Barbed Wire's funding. $1,500 means I can't support local businesses that are giving back to our schools and our programs. that's where $1,500 gets us right now.
I
Is-
appreciate that.
All of, as much fundraising and costs, and we want families to go support our local businesses, that doesn't get us to the point where we can do that right now.
And I appreciate that. And obviously, you know, there is the stuff in column movements and there's other pieces to that, and I appreciate that, no question. My wife is a teacher and I would like to see more each year, coming out in her paycheck too. The alternative, unfortunately, is us finding ways to cut costs when 80% of our expenses are salary. And that would mean less teachers, bigger class sizes. I know we don't want to hear that, we talk about that, and we certainly want to avoid that for the school district, but that's kind of the reality of where we would be if we.
Which is why we always try to come to you with exactly what we have and not try to start low and go higher. This is what we have.
We feel very comfortable telling people because of the rise in per pupil increase by the state through the governor's plan was 5%. I feel very comfortable saying we were able to give our teachers that percentage raise, and we were able to give all our employees that percentage raise. That may not be what you want to hear, but that I feel very comfortable saying all our money to staff.
So you all are gonna do some math on 1C, and when we next meet, you'll come back to us with some numbers on that.
And I should be able to run those and get them to you today's Tuesday. I think we should be able to do that within Skyward. I would think either by the end of this week or early next, week, be able to shoot those numbers to you. What we estimate that cost will be for the employees on that supplement, or should be on our district schedule.
And then just on this negotiations document that you provided for us, I noticed those numbers are nice and round. They look quite beautiful. Could we have the specific figures for each of the ones that you list here? Right, like, so, you know, the 450,000 for the general fund, that's a nice round number. It's really 458,965, I think. But is there a document where these numbers are specifically?
I can certainly create this. This is always just meant to be an estimation. Yeah, I can certainly create what each one of these would cost.
I think that would be really helpful just to see how those numbers pan out. I would really appreciate it.
Sure.
I think we need to schedule another meeting, folks.
Next week is gonna be best in my world. Fair Week's the week after that. And that's every day, all day.
Maybe towards the end of next week.
Oh, shoot.
What about Thursday?
Same day.
I think Thursday is fine. The only day that's not fine next week is Friday the 21st.
I don't think anyone wants to do it.
Thursday's open for me, so is Wednesday and
Thursday, okay. Let's do Thursday.
Well, did we all just at the same time have the
Yes.
same
What
day?
are the odds?
It's gotta be a good sign, gentlemen, just saying.
what are the odds? That's perfect.
Same time.
Same time, 4:30. Beautiful. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you all.
Appreciate all of your hard work.
Yeah. Do you want to go this to you? I guess we'll do that.
Oh, okay.
It's too popular on that.
Yeah. Do that right now before the end.
Okay.
You're gonna talk.
Good to see you.
Yeah,
you do.
Thank you so much.
Perfect.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
You missed that fun time yesterday watching that.
Did you move it around?
Oh, we just, there's like 6 of us.
Oh, shoot. I've
Just
seen
trying to get it,
that.
just trying to get it off.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Thanks.